G'day everyone, welcome to UFC Fight Night live betting show on Punt School and the Trademate Sports channel. Also headlined this week by Vincente Luque versus Belal Muhammad for the second time. We'll be going through that fight along with 5 others on the main card, breaking down, analysing the fights and seeing if we can find some betting angles for you there. So we'll be going through Ange Loosa versus Mounir Lazzez, Pat Sabatini versus TJ Laramie, Mayra Bueno Silva versus Yanan, Andre Filial versus Miguel Baeza, Chao Borralho versus Gadzhi Omargadzhiev, and Vicente Luque versus Belal Muhammad. Couple of tongue twisters in there, ones that I definitely botched the pronunciation of, but that's not what you came here for. Anyway, as always, as I mentioned off the top every show, I'll give away 2 bets this week. Don't want to give away too much as there's people that pay for MMA Punt School. So, we'll just stick to the 2 a week and keep everyone happy. All right, let's get into it. For this fight, Ange Loosa versus Mounir Lazzez. Unfortunately, there are no odds up at the moment on Top Sport because it is a bit of a late notice fight. I think the fight's only been scheduled maybe about 36 hours ago, with Ange Loosa coming in for I think it was I can't remember, got his name here. Yeah, Zaleski, sorry. But anyway, we'll crack on without the odds. But I believe Lazzez in some places has opened up at about 1.5 and Loosa around 2.7, something like that. But we'll crack on. So, I think Lazzez wins most of the exchanges on the feet in this one. He's a bit more of a diverse striker. He's got wicked kicks, pretty decent straight punches. I mean, he was able to hang with Abdul Razak Al Hassan in the pocket for long periods and able to piece him up for most of the fight. I know that Abdul's only really, solid for a certain amount of time because of his gas tank, but still he had the confidence to stay at range with him or stay on the feet with him for most of the fight. From what I've seen so far, he looks a dangerous fighter on the feet. Lots of first round knockouts, all the good stuff before coming to the UFC. I think that'll just keep Loosa on the back foot most of the time. Just have him a little bit worried. And I mean, Loosa's, he's good he's got good, decent strikes, but nothing that's he's not too threatening at all. Like he doesn't really throw huge bombs or anything like that. He's, stays in the pocket, like pretty efficient with his strikes, which I think is great. And I think he will have success in the UFC. But if he wants to win this fight, I think he needs to get it down to the ground or at least work his wrestling as much as possible. So, I assume Loosa will be trying to get this to the ground. But, I mean, Lazzez, from what I've seen, looks like he has decent takedown defense. He's quite good on the ground, rarely gets held down for long at all. Normally, gets back to his feet quite quickly. So, I'm not going to be surprised if Loosa is able to get him down. I think he will have to fight pretty hard for it. It's not going to come as easy as it did for him in, let's say, his last fight against John Howard. Like you saw in the Jack Maddalena fight, he really struggled to get him down for most of the fight. I think that will kind of be where Lazzez's grappling's kind of at, and I think he will be able to stuff most of his takedowns. So that leaves kind of Loosa in a bit of a tricky position because if he's going to get dominated on the feet and maybe only able to land a couple of takedowns, and even if he does get takedowns, I can see Lazzez kind of just getting back up to his feet reasonably quickly. It leaves Loosa in a position where it's going to be hard for him to win the fight or assert any dominance in any area, just from what I've seen from his fights so far. I mean, he could come out and surprise us and, be so good in the wrestling that he's able to hold Lazzez down for most of the fight. But from what I've seen, he did that he held Howard down for maybe half the fight. I couldn't imagine him doing the same to Lazzez. Sorry. So I've got Lazzez priced around the like 1.3 to 1.4 mark. So I think 1.5 is a good bet, first of all, for us today. I would be locking that in. Maybe not straight away, maybe just have a look and see. I think it's only, just opened up at, the likes of Pinnacle and stuff like that. So maybe wait a little bit, see if a little bit of money comes on Loosa and you can snag a better price on Lazzez. But for me, 1.5 looks like value on Lazzez for me. So there's number one for today. We'll move on to the next fight, which is Pat Sabatini and TJ Laramie. I do believe there are odds on Top Sport for this one. Yeah. So we've got Laramie at 4.4 and Sabatini at 1.21. Unfortunately, we've got no props out on Top Sport today, so we'll just have to roll with the money line prices. For this one, so TJ takes this on late notice, kind of. I mean, he's had about 3 weeks. It was scheduled about 3 weeks ago, but he was scheduled to face Baghdasaryan, I believe, on this same card. So it doesn't really make much of a difference at all. It's just, I mean, it kind of does in a way, because Baghdasaryan's a good striker. Sabatini's a wrestler. So he's gone from preparing for a striker. Like, he'll be fit, obviously. He was training for a fight, but this is like the complete opposite of fighter that he was preparing for. I think there's still quite a few unknowns about TJ, obviously, because, his first fight in the UFC, his only fight in the UFC went for 45 seconds. Obviously, you can go back and look at some of his fights beforehand on the Contender Series. I watched his 5-round fight against the other day. Who was that against? Cruz. Yeah. Andrew Cruz, who he looked very, very good against. But of course, these are not fighters in the UFC. They are certainly not at the level of a Pat Sabatini. He's looked really good, I think, in most of his fights. But that loss to Minna exposed, and also he nearly got caught. I believe it was an armbar from memory against Daniel Swain. So he does have a propensity to be caught in submissions, along with that Minna choke. So other than that, I think he's looked very sharp. I think he will be a good prospect. It's just, this is a big step up for him. And just after what Sabatini did to Tucker Lutz, you would be thinking that Laramie is probably going to be spending a lot of time being controlled on the ground here, defending submissions. I thought Sabatini's last performance, doing what he did to a fighter of the caliber of Tucker Lutz, was very impressive. And he's a real his wrestling, his submissions, but I'd say more so his wrestling is going to be tough for a lot of fighters in this division to be able to handle. Laramie, as I've said before, he's shown the propensity to get caught in a few sub attempts against Swain and Minna. So there is a chance he could get caught in one here too, considering Pat's ground credentials. But I do think if he can keep things standing, Laramie's got, good background in wrestling. So, I mean, would you be surprised if he could keep things standing for most of the fight? Probably, but it wouldn't be the wildest suggestion in the world. And if he can keep things standing, I think this will be a very competitive fight. And if anything, I would give TJ the edge in the stand-up. I could see Sabatini maybe even panicking just a little bit, thinking, oh, no, I can't get this guy down. I'm going to have to stand with him. I didn't expect this to happen, and the panic sets in. And TJ's he's got some great he's got an all-round good striking game. He absolutely ruined that fella I talked about before, Andrew Cruz, I believe his name was. This is TJ's first fight in a year and a half, which is a bit of a worry. But on the other hand, he's very young. So I'm sure in this year and a half we haven't seen him. I'm sure that he's upped his game in all sorts of areas. But sure, maybe in the early goings he'll suffer from a bit of ring rust, which which really leaves that Sabatini submission angle. It would heighten the chances of that happening nice and early. For this one, I've got no bets. I'd be looking into the prop market, potentially Sabatini by submission, but I haven't seen the prices yet. We'll have to. Yeah, I can't give you guys any tops. I haven't got the prices yet. We'll move on to the women's bout we have here. Got Mayra Bueno Silva versus Yanan Wu. I think Silva is better everywhere except for the wrestling. Could see her being taken down by Wu a couple of times. But when it gets there, I think she could throw up some attacks from her back and potentially find a sub from memory. Watching one of Wu's last fights. I'm trying to remember who that was against. Jocelyn Edwards. I think that was it. I think she nearly got caught in or at least she just doesn't look like she has a depth of jiu-jitsu or grappling. Like it doesn't look like she was from memory. I believe she nearly got caught in a submission there by Edwards. But I kind of believe, yeah, like I kind of said before, Silva is more threatening on the ground, and I think she's also more threatening on the feet. It's kind of the middle in between the wrestling where I could see Yanan Wu actually have some success. On the feet, I think she'll be able to overwhelm Wu for the most part, land the biggest strikes, and be able to just, I guess, be more diverse in what she throws. Wouldn't even be surprised if this was fight of the night, just a bit of a banger on the feet. Silva's just come off going with one of the best strikers in the division against Firo for 3 rounds. I know she was beat up for most of that, but still, she stood there, went toe-to-toe with her, didn't get dropped or anything like that. And like this is just a big step down. If you're used to looking at Manon Firo for 3 rounds and then you go to Yanan Wu, you'd have some serious confidence going into this fight. For me, the only path to victory here for Wu would be her holding her against the cage and potentially getting her down for long periods. But I can't really see how she holds Silva down for long periods. I think Silva's too dangerous off her back to just lie there. I think she'll be putting up, arm bars, triangles, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, she's just always a danger no matter where the fight goes. So yeah, 1.25 is the price for Silva, I believe. Let me have a look here. No, she's down to 1.19 now. And I mean, I don't really have a bet here at all in terms of money line. I think that those kind of prices make, they sound about right. You could look at Silva inside the distance, but I think she's priced around 2.5 or something like that. And yeah, I don't know. Yanan Wu could just be too tough to put away. So yeah, I would stay away from that personally. But let's move on. This is a fun one. Filial versus Miguel Baeza. I mean, Baeza, I think, is easily the better mixed martial artist. But the problem is he clearly he has a tendency to get clipped in his fights, and with the small gloves, MMA, all that kind of stuff you've heard before. You could be, by far the better mixed martial artist, and show that over 14 minutes and 59 seconds, and then you just got one punch. You leave your chin exposed for 1 second and it's all over. And, recently he's shown a propensity to, get cracked. You've got Chaos Williams knocked him out. Brown even rocked him. I mean, you can throw in the Ponzinibbio in there too, but he took a lot of damage in that fight. But he didn't get dropped or anything like that. So that's a good sign. But yeah, when he gets into the pocket is when you almost like squirm your face. Well, I bet Baeza last time against Williams, and you just felt like every time he got into the pocket, he was a little bit slow or slower than Williams, and just a lot better chance of being the one that drops. So yeah, if he can sort out his defense, I think he's a very dangerous prospect. But he's fighting someone in Filial who I think is quite one-dimensional. He's got good boxing, but I think that's just about it, really. If Baez has great kicks, if Baez can just keep him at kicking range, I think he should be able to avoid his punches and beat up his lead leg and body with kicks. So, in other words, if I'm Baez, stay out of the pocket as much as possible, try and fight at a kicking range and beat him up from range. If he's coming into that boxing kind of range, circle away and get out of there. Don't get stuck on the cage. That's the worst thing you could do. Or don't come flying in and start trading in the pocket with more than one punch. I think Baez can also get this to the ground if he wants to and work some submissions and ground and pound. So, yeah, it's one of those ones where as long as Baez can stay at a boxing range, I can see him beating Filial reasonably comfortably. I think Filial has a gas tank problem too. Saw that a little bit in the Pereira fight, but if you go back and watch some of his earlier fights, it's very evident there. I think the only reason Baez is priced where he is now, which is... he is priced at 1.56 and Filial's at 2.42. I think the only reason he's priced in that way is because he can be tagged, and he's shown that his chin is maybe not a weakened chin, but he can be tagged. If you knew that Baeza maybe had worked on his defense or had an incredible chin, I reckon he would be priced something like 1.3 to 1.4. But the problem is when you're betting Baeza, sure, a great mixed martial artist, and sure, better than Filial in just about every area. But yeah, you're taking on board with you just that. And Filial's got the power. He's got all the finishes on his record. So, yeah, I think it's priced right at the moment. And for me, I'd be staying away. Have a look out for submission for Baeza. I think that could be a little a good. I know that for me, Baeza knockout, I think is somewhere around 2.5 to 3 at some books. I mean, to me, that I'd be fading that as much as possible and be looking at getting on board with the submission instead if you do want to go that way. But yeah, that's how I see things. Let's move on to the co-main event. Yeah, very weird one, this. You've got two guys here, and I'm just going to call them Borralho and Gadzhi because I'm not going to try to pronounce the other two names. They're both basically coming straight off the Contender Series and into a co-main event slot, which is a rarity. I mean, I don't think this has ever been done before. But anyway. But I mean, they're two good prospects. Let's just put it that way. Weird that they've matched them up this early. Normally, you see, you never really see two Dana White Contender Series prospects being matched up early on, especially two that I think look pretty decent. Anyway, so they're kind of eliminating each other early, which I think is weird. But anyway, I'm not the matchmaker here, am I? So you've got Borralho at 2.06, and you've got Gadzhi at 1.76 there on Top Sport. Yeah, like I said, two good prospects in the middleweight division here. Borralho's very well-rounded, but mostly dangerous on the feet, whereas Gadzhi, you can probably tell by his last name, very wrestling and grappling based. Believe he's from Russia. So, he's got one of those famous Russian surnames, which at the moment is quite trendy, that, they're normally favorites going into fights. Let's just say that based on their last name, since the likes of Nurmagomedov, etc., arrived in the UFC. On the feet, Borralho, I think will take care of Gadzhi quite easily. He's a lot more technical, confident, has a lot more weapons on his feet. But the problem is I think he might be quite hesitant to really go for it because he'll be preparing himself for the Gadzhi takedown at all times. From what I've seen, Borralho's defensive wrestling looks to be at a good level, but I'm not sure it's at a level where he'll be able to stop the attacks from Gadzhi constantly. On the ground, I'm a bit more confident in Borralho, as there were a few times in Gadzhi's previous fights where he was either reversed on the ground or his opponent was able to get back up. So I think that, Borralho may be able to escape a couple of times potentially, which could tire Gadzhi out and lead to a later finish in the fight, or, he could win a decision, Borralho could. For me, overall, though, it's a definite, just stay out. Stay out of this one. It's just so hard to judge the level of Gadzhi's wrestling yet because he's only had, let's have a look. I believe he's only had the one Dana White Contender Series fight from memory. Yeah, so he knee-barred Janzi Silva within 4 minutes, and before that he was he was not fighting in the UFC. So it's hard to get to know, how good is this guy's wrestling? Are we talking about a Habib level, or are we talking about like an above average kind of level? So that above average kind of level, I'd be looking at, I think Borralho, could be a very good bet here as an underdog. But if it's the other way and he's got very, very, very good wrestling, then the price on him is probably a little bit of a steal. So it's very hard to know. And Borralho, I mean, actually, I have seen quite a bit of his defensive wrestling. It looks good, but no one's at the caliber of a Gadzhi. So for me, it's a stay out. You've got two guys here coming off the Contender Series. Let's wait. Let's see how this fight plays out and look to bet either of them moving forward. All right, but I do have a bet in this one, the main event, Vincente Luque versus Belal Muhammad. Fun fight here. I mean, the welterweights are getting a bit of a shine at the moment. I believe these guys are 4 and 5 in the division, or 5 and 6, something like that. So I think one of these guys, they win this fight, and that gets them that big fight with your Gilbert Burns, your Colby Covingtons, Hamzat, potentially, those kind of guys that, I believe the winner of this gets one more fight and they win that next one, then they're going to get a title fight. But on the feet, I give the advantage to Luque. He's got the edge there. He's got more power, more confidence in his striking, I would say. I mean, they both have good weapons. They're both good on the feet. They may even be even in terms of like skill for skill, but I don't think that personally. I think Luque is more skillful, but even if they were equal in terms of skill, I think Luque is just a bit more dangerous because he's got that power. He's got a good chin, etc., etc. And I think the longer it stays on the feet, the worse that is for Belal. As you guys can probably imagine, Muhammad will try and get this to the ground, but he is going to have to be quite elite in terms of his entries to avoid the Luque chokes, especially his last two fights. He's won by Das choke against Woodley and Chiesa. And overall in the UFC, he has 4 finishes by Das choke, 1 by Anaconda. So if he wants to take Luque down, which I think he can, he is going to have to worry about that. But overall, I think Muhammad has good top game, so I can see him spending a decent amount of time down there. Where Luque may have his biggest edge is just his general toughness and cardio. I did notice Belal looked a little tired in the 3rd round of that Wonder Boy fight after doing all of that grappling. So you could even see a scenario where Belal could look very good for 3 rounds, spend a lot of time on top, win the first 3 rounds, And then he comes out 4th round and he's just gassed from having to work so hard to keep Luque down. So I think that Luque is going to, make him work harder than someone like Wonder Boy to keep him down there. So yeah, like I said, I think even if you've bet Luque, you're still very live going into the 4th and 5th rounds if he's been losing up until that point. So yeah, considering Belal's best weapon in this fight is his wrestling, and he's got good ground and pound, but Luque is a big level up on the opponents. Other opponents he's been able to land damage on down there. And hasn't really shown a slick submission game or anything like that. So yeah, you would assume come the 4th and 5th round, Luque will have an edge. If he's able to compete in the wrestling, that's the main thing. If he's just been useless the whole fight, he's got no edge. Come the 4th or the 5th, he's probably just going to be taken down again. But yeah, as I was going to say before, Belal he doesn't really have much of a ground game in terms of submissions, and I don't think he'd be able to ground and pound Luque out for a finish or anything like that. So I think the best way to approach this fight, I think the odds are about right at the moment where they are. I will get them up for you guys. Yeah, Belal's at 2.45 and Luque at 1.55. I think that's about right for me. The edge I see, and obviously the props aren't out yet, but if you can get this when Top Sport come out with the markets, is I think if you want to side with Belal, then I would be looking at him to win by decision. And a lot of people get spooked because there's 5 rounds and a lot can happen in 5 rounds, etc., etc. But Vincente is just, he's never been finished in the UFC. Belal's, hasn't got a wicked ground game, that's finishing people over and over. So for me, if you're happy to take 250, 260, 270 on Belal on the money line, I think anything that you can get about Belal 350 or above on decision, I think is a good bet. So that would be my other recommendation for this card. Vincente Luque, on the other hand, if you wanted to side with him, yeah, to be honest, I haven't really had a look, but it's hard to say. I think he's more likely to get a knockout than a submission. I think if he's going to get a submission, it's going to be one of those Das chokes probably. But I think if Vicente is going to win this fight, I think his most likely outcome would be the knockout. Just Belal not being able to get him down, maybe getting a bit tired, and Vicente finishing him on the feet. So if you want to side with Vicente, just off the top of my head, if we're pricing him about 1.5, that gives him about 60% chance of winning. Yeah, you'd be happy to allocate at least 35% of that to him winning by knockout. So yeah, there's some good percentages for you heading into this one. But that does us for this week. Once again, there's the 6 fights on the main card. Like always, if you want bets for the whole card, there's 6? There's 8 other fights on this card too, which I'm sending bets out for our subscribers. So if you're keen on joining, limited time offer at the moment. It's 50% off everything on the website. So you can get the monthly subscription for $15 Aussie dollars, which is like $10 US, or like 10 euros or whatever that is for a month. Or you can get the 3 monthly. Sorry, I am still here. Or you can get the quarterly subscription for $40. So that works out to probably be like 30 USD or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, that offer will expire in the coming days. So jump on that as soon as possible. But yeah, that does us for today. Like, subscribe to both channels, do all the good stuff. And I should be back next week, I can't remember. I think it's Lemos versus Andrade from memory. So yeah, enjoy that one, folks, and I will see you back next Thursday or Friday. Cheers.